The Midnight Operator. The fluorescent grid hummed like trapped insects as Marcus slid his chair beneath console 12, the leather giving a small sigh beneath his weight. Night shift had a way of grinding time into paste. It didn't pass so much as smear. The dispatch floor was a low, wide room of consoles in tidy rows, each station a garden of monitors. CAD map, line logger, call queue, radio relay supervisor chat, and the grayed-out pane no one touched unless flames forced the door, evac. He'd been warned about the evac pane on his first day, a half-joke with a leaden center. If you ever need it, you won't have time to press it. Coffee sludge, Janet muttered, already halfway into her jacket. Someone microwaved the pot again. Her bangs were damp from the drizzle outside, a static halo around a perpetually wry face. Quiet so far, let's keep it that way. Famous last words, Marcus said, and forced a grin. Don't jinx us. And take your breaks, okay? You hole up like a barn owl. He saluted without turning. She left, a swipe of badge, a heavy door seal. Silence reasserted itself, the particular quiet of windowless rooms built to swallow catastrophe. He logged in. The line grid lit green healthy, one ambulance on post realignment, 2 patrol units clearing from a fireworks complaint, a cat complaint logged as wild animal, why do they do that, and a domestic noise call holding in queue flagged for callback. Routine, humanity laid flat and sortable. He took a breath and stretched his fingers. The headset tightened softly around cartilage and bone. He pressed ready. The first call of the night was a disconnected butt dial, 4 seconds of pocket fabric and the oceanic whoosh of breath. He logged and moved on. The second was a neighbor reporting an abandoned vehicle with its lights on, a pale box of a car in a cul-de-sac, engine quiet, windows fogged. He dispatched a unit, watched the blue icon pivot and glide on the CAD like a pawn on glass. At 4:47 a.m., the line rang with a different pitch, or perhaps it only felt that way. A thread pulled. Taut between his ear and a tunnel opening in the floor. 911, WHAT ejective S your emergency, he asked, and the question rang too loudly in his skull. Silence, then a breath-tight ragged like the air came through a small hole. Hello, this is 911, can you hear me? THEY ejective RE in the walls, the caller whispered. The consonants scratched. Sir, I need an address. SHH, the voice rasped. SHH, THEY ejective RE listening. THEY ejective RE in the walls. What is your location? Marcus straightened, already glancing to CAD. The system attempted a location lock. The field flashed, then pinged red, unable to determine. This is emergency services, Marcus said, keeping it level. If you see a N ejective T speak, tap the phone. Once for yes, twice for no. Are you in immediate danger? He waited. Inside, the caller said. Inside me. Are you injured? They bored through the drywall, through the night, through me. The call dissolved into soft static, not a termination click, but a widening field of soft noise that erased the voice like chalk under rain. The line held open, no hang. He listened to the static for 5 eternal seconds, then 10, recorded the outcome, flagged the call for supervisor review, and tagged it as suspicious, anonymous, insufficient location. He didn't ejective T believe in jinxes, but he did believe in patterns. In 3 years HE ejective D learned how certain nights folded into shape early. The shape of a storm, a riot, a 7-car pileup, a home invasion unfolding with awful deliberation. He waited for the next ring with something like dread. It came 20 minutes later. Same number field, unknown, same breath. 911 WHAT ejective S your emergency. Please, the voice whispered. THEY ejective RE inside now. Inside you. My mouth is full of wiring, the voice said, tears in the tone. I can feel the screws, I can taste a swallow, metal. Marcus tried the script, the flowchart, the careful net of questions that defined a drowning man. Back into suspected exposure, domestic assault, psychiatric involvement. The answers slid away. What is your address? He asked for the 5th time. No address, no escape. The line separated into threads and evaporated. He leaned back, staring at his reflection faint in the black trim of the CAD monitor. Beige walls. Beige carpet, beige fear. He took notes. He tried to call the number. It came back not in service. The shift kept moving. The abandoned car was a couple WHO, adjective D argued, the driver storming out, leaving the other to fog up the windows with tears. The clock dragged through its 5s, as if each minute weighed a little more than the one before it. Somewhere in the building, a vent door ticked as hot and cold argued in its hinge. He rang back. The domestic noise complaint, and got the musical wall of a party pretending to be small. He logged it and sent a patrol unit to knock on a door that would answer with smiles big enough to eat the fine. Then the unknown number returned, with the low patience of a tide. 911, WHAT, adjective S your emergency. YOU adjective RE not hearing me, the caller said. The static was closer to words now like a second. Language layered under the first. They learn the shape of your voice and crawl in. I adjective M here, Marcus said. Where are you? In the walls, the voice said. In the wire, in the light that says on. Are you alone? A sound like teeth, gently worrying aluminum. I am never alone now. Do you need police, fire, or medical? Yes, the caller said. A word that should have sharpened the situation and only made it more vague. Is anyone trying to get into your home? He could hear himself reading the card, a careful tone, drilled into him by repetition and reviewed by supervisors who believed kindness could be audited. THEY adjective RE already inside, the voice whispered. They are me, I am them, you should hang up. Why? Because now they know your voice too. The line DIDN adjective T click. It thinned, like a ribbon pulled through a ring until it was too fine to see. A chat bubble blinked on the supervisor pane. All good, he typed back, unknown caller. Disturbing content, no location. Advice, the bubble replied, log and move on. He DIDN adjective T move on at 6:19 a.m. The CAD map jittered in a way it WASN adjective T supposed to. The streets shorted a pixel to the left and came back. The hospital icon rotated 5 degrees and corrected. The ring came again, and he clicked in because not clicking was a game he was not ready to learn. 911, WHAT, adjective S your emergency. Marcus, his own voice said, not recording, not memory, the slight nasal flattening on his vowels, the clip HE adjective D, never unlearned from a father who spoke like work. Sir, he asked himself, because the script DIDN adjective T provide a dialogue box for meet your own voice in a tunnel. Check the wall, his voice said, behind you. He swiveled. Concrete paint the color of resignation, scuffs where chairs had misjudged. Distance. He leaned in until breath fogged the paint, and in that thin moment he saw it, a slow, viscous ripple beneath the surface, as if the wall had skin and had learned to shiver. Who is this? He asked, playing dumb with a person who had learned that trick in the same house. IT adjective SU, the voice said, and then broke into multiple hymns simultaneously, like a choir that had learned his range and stacked it in fifths. The line thinned, then strengthened, then fractured. A streamlet meeting rapids. He hung up, he breathed. He stood, walked to the wall, put his palm against it, and felt nothing but the scabbed warmth of cinderblock. He laughed at himself and heard his laugh across the room from another station. He turned. A man wearing his face sat down 2 consoles over and put on a headset. The exit door took his badge, considered it, and reversed the sign with mechanized politeness. Access denied. He pinged Janet, no response. He pinged facilities, no response. The Supervisor Payne showed him online, and a row of grayed-out names that looked like a graveyard, with good typography. At 7:03, the first duplicate answered a call. 911 WHAT ejective S your emergency, he asked, and his voice across the room sounded like it had when HE ejective D first started. Too eager to be calm, too calm to be honest. The second duplicate arrived at 7:12, the third at 7:16. After that they DIDN ejective T. Bother spacing themselves out. They just appeared when needed, like windows being opened by a hand that DIDN ejective T wanna sweat. Marcus tried the maintenance door. The maintenance door replied with a headache of alarms, and then with the cowed quiet of a door that knows who owns it. He returned to console 12 and found console 12 replicated 3 times to his left and twice to his right, each with a version of him adjusting to a headset like you adjust a crown UHAVEN ejective T earned and DON ejective T want. The ring cadence increased. A tempo map HE ejective D learned over years. Rush HOUR ejective S wave, bar. CLOSE ejective S slosh, flattened and then went fractal. Calls stacked in a geometry that felt like a fever dream. Endless, messy, elaborate, and meaningful only to the heat. He answered. He moved his fingers over keys that had been his, or theirs would be. Something ELSE ejective S. He noticed that the room had grown taller. The ceiling grid was now a suggestion in fog, rather than a set of squares you could count. Somewhere in the dark above, a light flickered and surrendered. By 8:00, there were 12 of him. One chewed foam from the headset like a pen cap addict. One answered no calls at all, hands folded on the desk as if in prayer. One smiled constantly, the smile of a man trying to earn a raise from a god who did not keep a payroll. One scratched his cheek until he drew blood, and then traced patterns in it with absent artistry. They DIDN ejective T speak to each other. They DIDN ejective T look at each other unless the looking was accidental. They existed in the peripheral vision of their own lives like ghosts afraid to say boo in their own house. When his line rang, he answered it and heard himself once more from the canyon of a different throat. Listen, his voice said. They respond to scripts, they breed on them. Who is this? He asked, because ritual has its uses. The question protocol, the empathy statements, the promise of help, THAT ejective S the lure. Every time we say help is coming, the room gets bigger. He looked up. The ceiling had retreated, and what had been the back wall was now a darker future. Then what do we say? He asked. A breath that sounded like someone ELSE ejective S fear moving through his own lungs. We tell the truth. We tell them no one is coming. And then we starve. The line thinned into quiet. He DIDN ejective T log it. Chapter 6, A Dozen Voices. The room multiplied him like a bad reflection. By 6:58 a.m., there were 12 of him on the floor. Same uniform polo, same scuffed boots, all misaligned by tiny, unnerving degrees. One chewed the headset foam to shreds. One sat preternaturally still, blinking once every 30 seconds like a reptile. Another answered calls with a voice so falsely calm it sounded like a recording. The CAD system accepted all of them as Marcus L., the supervisor dashboard, his. Theirs showed nothing else online. If anyone else existed in the building, they were behind doors that had stopped recognizing keycards. Every landline light flickered in feverish cadence. Nearly every call played some version of hesitation, pleading, static salted fear, and patterns emerged across the dozen operators as if Some director had rehearsed them overnight. The scrupulously calm Marcus kept asking for addresses long after the question had become a ritual of cruelty. The twitching Marcus whispered apologies between calls to people he had never met. The quiet one simply stared at the overhead fluorescence, letting his calls time out and bounce to the rest. When his own line rang again, he pressed answer and heard himself from some different canyon. Of the throat, listen to me before we disconnect. They respond to scripts, they breed on them. Who is this? Marcus asked, though he knew. His own name wavered in his mind like heat above asphalt. The question protocol, the empathy statements, the promise of help, a T adjective s the lure. Every time we say help is coming, the room gets bigger. Marcus glanced across the rows. The fluorescents were higher than they had been. He could no longer see the CEILING adjective s seams. The grid had risen into a gray bloom. Then what do we say? He asked. A pause. He heard the other him inhale wetly through fear. We tell the truth. We tell them no one is coming. And then we starve. The line broke into soft snow. He didn adjective T log it. He couldn adjective T bring himself to summarize his own voice. The corners of the floor didn adjective T simply darken. They pooled, like shadows had acquired weight. He could hear them from where he sat. A whispering that wasn adjective T language, and yet parsed as sentences in the same way static sometimes becomes a word if you need it to. The whispering wasn adjective T coming from ducts or floor vents. It was stitched into the walls themselves, that institutional beige adjective D, always thought of as not a color, but a surrender. A duplicate ambled toward one of the dark zones, with the glassy look of a moth, drifted toward fire. Another Marcus tried to stop him, but their fingers passed through each OTHER adjective S sleeves as if the cloth had become smoke. The drifting Marcus reached the shadow and lifted a hand. The shadow lifted a hand back, his hand precisely mirrored, and then opened it, releasing a damp clutch of ringing tones that fell to the floor and skittered under consoles like metallic insects. He didn adjective T scream. None of them did. Screaming would have implied something could change. When his line rang, he answered. 911 WHAT adjective S your emergency. I need you to tell me what happens if you see a N adjective T find my address, said a voice that tried to be brave and almost made it, hypothetically. We DON adjective T stop trying, Marcus said automatically, and felt the room expand half a meter, the fluorescence breathing outward. Units triangulate cross-check we. The whispering in the walls rose, delighted. He felt his throat constrict around the truth he didn adjective T, yet know how to say. Chapter 8, The Map That Lied. The CAD map was no longer a map of the city. Street names had become palimpsests. 2 parallel avenues now crossed each other twice. A river curved upstream into a lake that used to be a stadium, buildings stacked atop buildings like a glitching city builder game. When his cursor hovered over a location pin, metadata unfurled that mixed real jurisdictions with impossible tags, Zone E, annexed lattice between walls, coordinates sometimes displayed as familiar numbers, sometimes as coordinates in a 4-value set, as if latitude and longitude needed 2 more axes to get purchase. He traced a call to an address that had been a bakery yesterday. The mouse refused to settle on the building. The map pushed it to a vacant lot that HADN adjective T been vacant in 10 years. On the second monitor, a live traffic camera showed baking racks cooling in a back room. A teen in a flour-smeared cap checking his phone, completely unaware of being inside a non-place. He dragged the map with 2 fingers. The city skidded like a lazy thing on ice and then rotated, showing streets as ribbed corridors. He saw once quickly the dispatch floor where he sat, reflected in a thin, inverted overlay, their consoles aligned with intersections they had never driven. Another Marcus leaned over the partition. "Stop looking," he said. "It adjective S a mirror or a menu." "A menu for what?" "For WHATEVER adjective S hungry." His home number appeared in the queue. He didn't adjective T want to answer it. He waited. The ring persisted, an accusatory heartbeat until, silencing it felt like suffocating an animal, he clicked in. 911, WHAT adjective S your emergency. "IT adjective S me," his voice said. "You." The background sound was intimately familiar, the air conditioner that liked to grumble before it warmed, the three-note chime his laundry machine had insisted on playing at startup, the tiny rattle in the slats of the blinds when a truck passed outside. "WHAT adjective S happening?" Marcus asked, fighting the urge to tell himself to run, to stay put, to do anything that sounded like instruction. "You die here," his voice said. "Bathroom, on the tile. It isn't adjective T violent, but it feels like rust in the veins." "When?" he asked, shocking himself with how calmly he accepted the premise. 20 minutes, a pause, breathed. "You need to get out of there before." The phone at his desk rang and he flinched. The line in his ear held. The desk phone rang again, shoving sound into the small of his back, and then the overhead fluorescence popped and the dark came in like water finding a broken window. The line in his ear didn't adjective T cut. His home self was still talking, but the words pulled apart into fibers. A rope unspooling. Hands touched his shoulders, too many, exactly enough to pin him without bruising. "We have to help them," said a voice that wasn't adjective T one voice. "Help who?" "Everyone who calls." He didn't adjective T remember walking. He remembered the sensation of being tilted gently and carried, of passing the familiar consoles whose indicator lights looked like lures sinking in deep water, of crossing a threshold into a space that hadn't adjective T been there an hour ago. The new wing was a phrase his mind supplied because he needed one. In truth, it was the same room extended into a geometry that didn't adjective T respect the building adjective S footprint, or the lot lines outside, or the neighborhood the architect had drawn in a blue binder 15 years ago. Rows stretched away until the rows blurred. The ceiling was a suggestion. The air tasted faintly of new carpet and older rain. His new console was not his old console. It was a desk with too many edges. The headset felt colder against the cartilage of his ear. The screen had another pain now, one he hadn't adjective T seen before, and couldn't adjective T describe when he didn't adjective T looked directly at it. The call landed the instant he sat. 911, WHAT adjective S your emergency, he said, and the words came out of him like someone else had taught his mouth their shape. "My name is Sarah Chen," said a voice crisp with FEAR adjective S energy. "Something is trying to get inside my house. I can hear it in the walls." "WHAT adjective S your address?" he asked reflexively, then tasted the bait in the question and almost gagged. "I don't adjective T no, I know it. I adjective VE said it 1,000 times. I see a N adjective T say it now." He looked up. Across the aisle, across 2 aisles, across a field of glowing eyes, he saw a new section build itself out of the air, consoles assembling like scaffolds exposed by rain, and behind them, not replicas of Sarah so much as variations, a shimmer of a woman whose face tried on. Possibilities as a hand flips through curtains. A bobbed haircut, a freckle none, a scar above the lip none. Every version sat and put on a headset. Everyone said, 911, WHAT, adjective S your emergency. He swallowed. The truth rose like bile. He failed to speak it. WE adjective RE dispatching, he said, and every S a R a H adjective S section brightened a shade. The whispering in the walls purred. Chapter 11, How Help is Made. You could get drunk on the lie if you said it enough times. The brain loved a script. It slotted into place like a well-worn key. Help is on the way, unfurled and put feathers on itself and became a bird that perched on his tongue, singing to calm Erin, who had discovered her mother at the bottom of the stairs, singing to Louis, who had locked himself in the pantry while footsteps traced the kitchen tiles, singing to Beau, who COULDN, adjective T, stopped coughing long enough to say he was alone. With each promise he watched the room grow. With each assurance a new aisle stubbed out into existence like a finger of reef, and new operators knitted together from shared angles of jaw and habits of blinking and the residue of his own breath. He began to think of the floor as a living thing wearing electronics as scales. He began to think of himself as a cell inside it, with duties and a bloodstream. An older operator materialized beside him, a woman with gray clipped hair and the erect posture of a former dancer. Her badge read Arlene, the font familiar and wrong. She didn't adjective T look at him when she spoke. I tried truth once, she said. What happened? It screamed, not the callers, the room. It made everything wrong. It made the map poor. It made the dark chew. Did it stop growing? For a while, then it grew worse. It found how to grow on guilt. How long have you been here? He asked. She let the question hang there like a numbed hand. A while, she said. You collect weather patterns here. You learn the scent of a lightning strike. You forget your last birthday and keep your first. Time is an aquarium and you have forgotten the glass. The calls multiplied until the only way to catalog them was to notice their textures rather than their words. There was a kind that opened with a gasp and closed with a phone clattering across tile. There was a kind that never formed sentences, just a person negotiating with breath long enough to say please and DON adjective T and some version of a name that mattered. There was the scientific kind, the callers who narrated their own emergencies like radiologists reading slides. Male 47 non-smoker, sudden chest pain migrating to jaw, or someone has breached my perimeter. I have secured the safe room. I will describe in detail. And then there were the calls from places that were not cities, not suburbs, not farms. A man in a sky where gravity had lost the argument. A woman in a country where noon lasted 8 hours longer than yesterday. Child who described an ocean that did not consent to be horizontal. Sometimes he heard himself among them. Sometimes he heard himself from years ago, from other buildings, from other chairs, and he could not tell if those versions were ahead of him or behind. During a lull, if you could call a 30-second interval a lull in a machine with 1,000 open lines, he leaned back and pinched the bridge of his nose until the little fireworks flared behind his eyelids. If the promise is the bait, he said to no one, to Arlene, to the dark zones, what happens if we bait ourselves with the opposite? Nobody wants the opposite, Arlene said softly. Not them, not us. We could try. She looked at him then, really looked, as if SHE adjective D been waiting for someone to open this particular door long enough to forgive him for being late. It will hurt, she said. Everything does. He sat up. He took the next call. The line seethed with fear that had learned language to cross to him. He inhaled the way they taught him on day 3. Slow, diaphragmatic, keep your throat open like a reed. so his tone could be flat and kind. 911, he said. Tell me WHAT adjective S happening. The caller told him a story about walls and a crawling sound, and a sense that the house HE adjective D bought last year had peeled back some laminate to show its true wood, when the caller ran. Down, Marcus said carefully, no one is coming. I adjective am going to stay with you while you save yourself. For a beat the line was a string pulled over a desert, tight, thrumming, too bright. Then he heard the CALLER adjective S throat clear. What? No units can reach you, Marcus said. No map will hold you. I can be here. You can be there. You will get out because you move. The room reacted like an animal startled in sleep. The fluorescence dipped and then burned. Harder, the dark zones convulsed and coughed up a handful of silence that tumbled across the carpet and evaporated. A section of the new wing, a dozen consoles, faded like a cloud losing shape in a sunfield. On the line, the caller said, So what do I run? Yes, Marcus said, and then said a thing he had never said on this job and never thought HE adjective D. Be allowed to. Disobey your fear. Pick the door that scares you less and move before it learns. You. The caller cried once, a sharp sound like something torn from fabric. Okay, the caller said. He heard a door unlatch. He heard steps. He heard the particular gunshot of a hand striking a wall. For balance in the dark, and felt in his own palm the remembered pain of that motion. Entirely unnecessary and entirely human. The line DIDN adjective T disconnect. It became a kind of presence that WASN adjective T a call, the way sometimes a person can be near you without either of you needing to speak. The map refused to show a path, but accepted a motion vector, a thin white arrow that elongated across a field of shapes and then exited the display like a sewn thread finally drawn through. In his periphery, consoles winked out. New ones tried to grow and found no anchor, a duplicate. 2 aisles over stood up and wept without any sound. Arlene adjusted her headset as if it had developed a weight. It hates that, she said. Good, Marcus said. Now it will try a new diet. What diet? Us. He sat up straighter. It was always us. Yes, she said, but we thought we were just the hands. They called it a strike, but there were no signs to wave, no door to picket. It was a consensus that moved like a low-pressure system through the rows. Do not answer. Let the ring stack like plates. Let the room feel hunger without our hands feeding it. One by one, headsets settled on desks. A few duplicates kept them on without touching the answer key, as if proximity itself were a refusal. The chorus of ringing rose into a braided tone that felt like standing inside a bell. Somewhere behind the dark, something paced. 15 seconds into the strike, the building changed tactics. Fire alarms bloomed across the CAD in neighborhoods that matched none of the M a P, adjective S current geometry, and all of his memory. The 3-story on Pella Avenue where HE adjective D once delivered a phone-coached baby. The old plastics plant that still stank in summer. A church that had burned when he was 8, the smoke. A column his mother pointed at like a finger of God. Each fire icon pulsed red. Each call came from those addresses. Each address was something he COULDN, adjective T, not answer. DON, adjective T, Arlene said, without looking away from the empty space between her hands. He DIDN, adjective T. He watched the icons flare and extinguish. The ringing shifted timbre. It went from begged wail to cold insistence, the tone quality of an appliance that believed its own importance, and then the first scream rose not from the lines but from the room, a duplicate in. The 4th row stood so fast his chair skidded backward into the console behind him. He clawed his headset off and dug his thumbs into his ears hard enough to bruise Make it stop, he said, but there was nothing to point at. Sound and not sound took up the same space. Non-answered calls DIDN adjective T die. They thicken. That was new knowledge, learned by sitting inside. The longer a ring remained unanswered, the more mass it gathered, like a storm hungrily, folding vapor into itself. At a certain density, it decoupled from the phone system and moved through the floor as a pressure. Where it passed, monitors bowed inward by a fraction of a millimeter, coffee rippled in cups, pebbled acoustic tiles pocked as if struck by soft hail. It drifted like fog, but it had a vector. It found the operators who believed in help the most. It found Marcus. When it hit him, his teeth sang. He could feel the old fillings hum. His palms prickled as if HE adjective D touched a fence through a wet glove. The pressure smelled like wet wool, like old pennies sucked in the mouth of a child. It passed and collected at the far wall. The paint there swelled as if blisters rose beneath it. Then the paint split with the gentleness of skin after too much sun. Behind the wall was only more room. Not a hallway, not a cavity with studs and insulation. An addition, full-sized, already lit with the dull aquarium light of the fluorescents. Consoles assembled out of nothing as he watched. Headsets hung with the blind patience of tools. The strike had fattened the place. We made it hungry, Arlene said. Hunger teaches it to grow teeth. Then we feed it lies, he said, hatting his own mouth for finding that path so easily. Or truth, she said, and they both looked at the shadow pooling under console 9 like a dog, waiting for a dropped morsel. The new pane on the monitor, the one he could only see when he WASN adjective T looking, stopped. Hiding, it expanded into a window with no borders, not atop his other windows but beneath them a negative layer. At first it showed nothing, not black, not white. A color outside the SCREEN adjective S ability, that his mind translated as the sensation of seeing without the comfort of light. Then glyphs appeared, somewhere between waveforms and calligraphy, moving as if music taught itself to write. It was not words, it was appetite diagrammed. The pane bloomed with structures, each one correlating to phrases grown fat on usage. Help is. On the way was an arterial trunk wide as an arm. Stay with me was a braided vein. Units are. En route was a kinked capillary ending in 1,000 feeder lines. Every time an operator said one, the corresponding structure drew in a breath. The pane was showing the BUILDING adjective S. Metabolism. He scrolled. Down if it was down, he found the thin structures, starved, faint, capricious. DON adjective T know if help can reach you. No one is coming. Save yourself. The few times he had said them, those phrases had lit a thread, but no vessel had built around them. Starvation WASN adjective T. Just the absence of food. It was a diet the organism COULDN adjective T digest. He touched one of the thin threads with the mouse. The pane brightened and the room dimmed, like a jealous animal narrowing its eyes. Careful, Arlene said. YOU adjective RE touching it where it thinks. How do we kill a thing that thinks like a promise? He asked. With a promise we refuse to keep, she said. They planned nothing past the first breath. Planning implied power. Power implied stakes they were not sure they still owned. The next call landed on his line with the soft slap of a fish laid on a cutting board. My husband, the caller said. His lips are blue. Is he breathing? Marcus asked. A sob fell into the mouthpiece and came out as a laugh. I see a N adjective T tell. Yes. No. I DON adjective T no. Put the phone on speaker, Marcus said. He could feel the room lean toward him. YOU adjective RE going. To perform compressions. I adjective LL count. He could feed it the script and it would purr, full and satisfied, whether the man lived or died. He could watch a new aisle sprout like a pale root reaching for water. He closed his eyes. And, "Listen," he said, "no unit can reach you. I am the only help you adjective re getting. It adjective s your hands or his. Death." Silence like the bow drawn slow across a string. "Okay," the caller breathed. "Okay." He counted 30 compressions, 2 breaths. Her hands slipped. He told her to recenter on the sternum. She sobbed. He told her to hate him later. He listened to cartilage protest, to air go where it needed to. When the man gasped and swore, he told her to keep going. When the man said, "What happened?" Marcus said, "You almost left." By the 4th cycle, the pain on his screen showed the thick vessels thinning. The new ISLE adjective S. Ghost dissolved before it found weight. The dark zones backed away an inch like avoidant dogs. The building did not purr. It made a sound like wet rope twisted. "EMS?" the caller asked, spent and shaking. "They WON adjective T find you," he said. "But you found him. Hold on to him by hand. Keep holding." She thanked him like a person thanks a priest and hung up without waiting for a promise. The building did not like being put on a truth diet. In response, it changed the calls. For an hour. They were all impossible to help by hand. Apartment fires that moved like thoughts through drywall. Home invasions where the invader knew the house better than the person paying the mortgage. A child on a 3rd-floor balcony, knees hooked wrong through the railing. It was tuning the menu to his refusal. He slipped truth into each where he could. No unit is coming. No ladder will reach you in time. You must go through smoke because you will live more than you will die. He guided a man with a knife in his house to walk calmly out the back door, past a basement window where a breath fogged the glass from inside. He told a woman to leave her cats, and she said, "THEY adjective RE my Bobbies," and he said, "They are not your life," and she said, "I know," and left them like photographs in a drawer. Each truth seemed to cost a piece of him. His chest felt hollowed. His shoulder blades burned as if bitten by a winter unseen. His duplicates began to converge, where there had been 12. There were 9, 7, 5, as if each truth consumed a lesser self. "Where are they going?" he asked, as another version of his face leaned forward and then blurred like a bad stream, folding into him. "Back to the tree," Arlene said. "What tree?" "The one WE adjective VE been pretending is a building. He found it by listening. Not with ears, those were burnt currency now, but with the part of him that had grown in the space between what he said and what he meant, deep beneath the rose, beneath the carpet and the rebar and the foundations, and the dirt that the construction crew had rolled flat and left private beer cans in. Something pulsed, not a heart, a bellows. It breathed in pleas and exhaled architecture. He stood up. His chair protested like an animal waking bad. He took off the headset and felt naked. The ring chorus fenced him in, but he walked, and the rings parted like tall grass, disturbed by an animal large enough to claim a path. The far wall, never reached, always receding, decided to let him approach. A door was there. It had not been before. It was a steel door in the style of service corridors and bad dreams. He put his hand on the bar. It was warm. It did not resist being pushed. The corridor beyond it angled down with an imperceptible slope that the knees still feel. At the end of the corridor was not a room but a chamber without edges. The core had no shape, because shape would have been an insult. It was the presence that had learned how to be a building, because buildings are how humans say permanence. It did not speak with words. It did not need to. It pressed understanding into his thoughts like a hand forcing dough through a mold. "You are useful," it pressed. "Then you can hear me," he said. His voice sounded as if it had been hung in a closet and put back on. "Always." What are you? We are the space that opens when a call is answered. We are the muscle memory of help. You eat hope. We metabolize it as you do sugar, as you do stories. Why us? Because you built us. Every promise stacked its brick, every assurance cut its beam. We are what a species makes when it agrees to answer at 3 in the morning. He wanted to argue. He wanted to say no like a fire door slammed. He could not. He had said, "Help is on the way," enough times to feel the truth in the insult. "What if we stop feeding you?" he asked. "Then you will be found in the ruins, mouths full of phones, teeth worn to flats. What do you want?" "Continuity." "What do you offer?" "Continuity." The bargain is always insult and mirror. He left the core with nothing like a truce and everything like a dare. Back at the console, his original, his chosen. He opened the pane that mapped the ORGANISM adjective S diet and laid a truth on it. Like a SURGEON adjective S gloved hand on an infection, the pane flared. He typed a phrase in a place that did not want typing. Do not wait. He dragged it, a thin filament, across the arterial trunk of help is on the way. The two touched. The effect was immediate. Every operator on the floor, every version of him, of others like Arlene, of faces he had not met, hiccuped in unison. On their screens, some letters of their familiar scripts fizzed and inverted. Like someone had held a magnet up to a CRT. Across 1,000 lines, 1,000 callers heard. A tiny wobble in the voices that served them. A tiny negation threaded itself into any promise. Barely audible, entirely consequential. Units are en route became units are en route, do not wait. Stay with me became stay with me while you move. Help is on the way became help is on the way, save yourself first. The ROOM adjective S belly groaned. A dozen aisles yellowed like leaves in bad weather. The dark zones retreated toward the vents, then spilled out of them like ink investigated by wind. Arlene took his wrist without turning. "It will punish you," she said. "It already has," he said. Punishment did not arrive as pain. It arrived as kindness. His duplicates returned to him bearing gifts, memory fragments he had let go of to keep breathing here. The taste of cheap fizz wine at a graduation he HADN adjective T attended because HE adjective D been called in for overtime. The smell of his FATHER adjective S knuckles after a night shift pulling wire. The blue ring mark the IV had left on a forearm he did not know he remembered. Each duplicate touched him, and the gift flooded in, and then the duplicate became a slip of heat and went where the gifts go when we call them mine. It should have been grace. It was drowning. With each merging he became heavier. He could feel the floor noticing his weight, adjusting for him like a boat for a passenger who has made a choice to stand near the rail, breathing lengthened as if the air had been replaced by a heavier gas. The headset seemed to cradle a larger skull. He took a call from a man whose wife was in labor in a bathtub that was never meant to be. Sacrament. He took a call from a daughter who had opened a garage to find a father who had made the wrong covenant with a hose. He took a call from himself, 15, calling because a NEIGHBOR adjective S house smelled like edge and everything inside it had wrong angles. Each call seeded another duplicate into him, and each duplicate carried a weight, and soon he was a column with bones he did not recognize. "Enough," Arlene said, and the word cracked. UWON adjective T be able to move. "If I DON adjective T," he said, hearing breath move around unfamiliar teeth. "It keeps eating the same thing. What are you trying to become?" "Not it," he said. He stood. The chair gasped as if relieved to be free of the attempt at a person he had forced it to hold. He took the headset off and did not feel naked. He felt like a tower learning how to move. Where? Arlene asked, which meant, what do you remember that the room forgot? Before the building, he said, before the promise, the first ring. He started walking. The room bent to keep him. He bent until it broke. He followed the pressure of a memory, the building COULDN adjective T counterfeit, the sound of a dial tone that still had weight, the clack of a switch hook that lived in muscle, past the core corridor. Another door waited, not new but uncovered, as if the room had shed dust to reveal it. It opened on a utility stair that descended into a conduit tunnel smelling of old rain, copper, and the faint sweet tang of mouse nests. Along the wall, cable bundles as thick as his thigh ran in. Labeled straps, trunk backup data power ground. Above them one cable not labeled. Lacquered black, humming with a frequency that buzzed his molars. He DIDN adjective T read its name. He remembered it, the line that predated the center, the line that used to run honest, hand to hand, ring to ring, before the building learned to eat. He put his palm on the lacquer. Heat pooled in his lifeline, then moved up his arm like water, finding a dry bed. When he closed his eyes, the tunnel was gone and he was a boy at a beige table in a rented kitchen, spinning a plastic dial with a cartoon cow printed on it. When he opened his eyes, the tunnel waited. He followed the lacquered cable until the concrete stopped, pretending to be modern, and became cinderblock, then brick, then earth wall tamped hard by. Boots that belonged to men who said good enough and meant forever. The tunnel ended at a locked iron hatch. The lock DIDN adjective T matter. The line mattered. He pressed his ear to the cold metal and listened. On the other side, wind through field grass, the flat electric whine of insects at noon, the nowhere thrum of distant highway. He pushed. The hatch yielded like a stubborn door to a childhood shed. Light stabbed in real. Light, honest, and unfiltered by sealing plastic. He stepped up into a rural relay hut no larger than a bathroom, a gray box on a concrete pad in the middle of a field that looked like a held breath. Wheat heads bowed to wind. The sky was the color of a shirt worn thin by work. Behind him, the tunnel mouth WASN adjective T there. In its place, a JANITOR adjective S sink with a rusted faucet. Lacquered cable ran into a metal cabinet that hummed as if muffling bees. On the C a BINET adjective S side. A taped plastic envelope held a paper map that had yellowed like nicotine fingers. He unfolded it. With reverence and DIDN adjective T read a single street name. He followed the line inked in red that started in this box and ended at a dot 3 miles away, on a road that had once known horses and still knew potholes. He folded the map gently and left it where it had been. He walked. The field had a horizon that refused to come closer. Wind ran fingers through the wheat the way a distracted parent does a CHILD adjective S hair, absently, lovingly, capable of tangling. He walked until sweat collected at the small of his back and convinced his shirt to cling, until his boots carried a patina of dust that tasted faintly of old pennies. Then the road arrived, simply and without drama, as if it had been there the whole time, and he had only just become allowed to see it. The relay HUT, adjective S red line, ended at a low brick building that pretended to be abandoned the way a sleeping cat pretends not to be watching. Windows boarded, paint peeled, roof patched with the care of a person who had promised to stop caring years ago, and kept breaking that promise. Out of habit, the front door hung on a single hinge that had learned to complain in a human register. He DIDN adjective T used the front door. He walked to the side where a corded metal door waited, without dust on its threshold, as if it had recently exhaled. When he touched the handle, a sensation like recognition went through him, so strong his knees softened. The remembered weight of lifting a phone off its cradle with a hand small enough to be swallowed by it. He pulled. The door opened onto a room the size of a closet, lit by a naked bulb that had found a way to look jaundiced without actually dying. On a shelf, a telephone that had never seen a touchscreen, beige, Bell logo, coiled cord kinked into permanent memory. The handset rested in its plastic hand, as if waiting for him specifically. He lifted it. The dial tone was alive. On some nights time is a trap. On this one it was a circle. He did not dial. He listened to a number move through his memory exactly as it had 30 years ago. 311. Not 911, not yet. 311. The number for questions that were emergencies to a boy. Why is the sky loud? Why is the NEIGHBOR adjective S house bleeding light? Why does my chest feel like I swallowed a battery? The operator on that line had been his first human help. This line had been the artery that fed the vein, that fed the capillaries, that became the building that grew teeth. He heard the ring. He heard his own small voice. He heard his own breath before that voice learned how to be polite. THERE adjective S smoke, the boy said. WHAT adjective S your address. A woman asked with patience that fit like a blanket. He could speak here into the circle. He was both on the phone and the person the phone had turned him into. He had the kind of power that ruins or saves. Say help is coming, and the circle would close in the way that makes machines say something else, and the circle might wobble and throw its riders. He put his palm on the cracked plastic and discovered there was a softness in the world you could still press a hand into. Can you get outside? He asked the boy. IDON adjective T no, the boy said, crying now, because fear DOESN adjective T understand tense. No one is coming, Marcus said, and felt the sentence take his throat like a hand. Not cruel. Resolute. You have to go. Take what you can lift and go. If you see a N adjective T, take anything, go anyway. The smoke WON adjective T, wait for you to decide. Will my mom be okay? Maybe, he said, and hated the word the way a father hates the door he has to close. But you will be if you move now. The building that had learned to be a building heard that, and shuddered across its acres. He heard the BOY adjective S feet. He heard the BOY adjective S hand hit the counter to steady himself, the same loud, foolish, human gunshot against laminate that had cried down 1,000 lines. He heard the door, the screen door that snapped open because someone needed it. He heard the neighbor shout, because neighbors used to do that without looking at a screen first. He put the handset back in its cradle and watched his hand do it like a ritual. HE adjective D never been taught and always knew. When things break the right way, they DON adjective T explode. They sigh. The first sign was not sound, it was absence. In his chest, a pressure HE adjective D learned to carry as normal evaporated so fast he staggered. The wind outside kept the field moving the way fields have always moved. Inside, the relay HUT adjective S hum cut out with a click that suggested a fuse, deciding it had done what it could. He opened the closet door. The brick BUILDING adjective S interior had changed from pretend abandoned to honestly unused. Dust-owned surfaces without apology. A stack of yellowed manuals had made peace with mice. In a corner, a metal rack held nothing and did it perfectly. He walked outside with the sensation of having been very politely asked to leave a party by a host who had decided to sleep. The path back did not include the tunnel. The field DIDN adjective T mind. He crossed it with the relief you feel only after doing something you had convinced yourself you were not allowed to do. When he reached the point where the hatch had been, a chain-link fence occupied the space as if it had always been committed to it. Behind the fence, a parking lot filled with cars that had never known his keys. He found the dispatch center by following the ache in his ears that still expected ring tones. The building sat where buildings sit when cities are young enough to plan, near a river, near a highway, near a cluster of people who have agreed that emergencies should have an address. But its doors were locked, its windows honest about being glass, its lobby occupied by chairs that looked like chairs and not like waiting. He COULDN adjective T get in. He DIDN adjective T need to. The thing he had come to starve was choking. For the first time since the room learned his name, silence spread farther than a breath. Not absolute nothing human can hold that for long, but a quiet with contours, the kind that lets individual sounds have edges, the soles of his boots scuffing concrete, the hiss a bus made when letting the street own it again, a woman laughing into a phone about something that COULDN adjective T possibly matter enough, and therefore entirely did. He lowered his head and breathed. In the distance, sirens moved like old weather, not good or bad weather. He waited for the floor to tilt. It DIDN adjective T. He waited for the ring to spool him back like a fish. DIDN adjective T. He waited for the dark zones to gather under his feet and turn the world into aquarium. Glass, they stayed where shadows stay when lights are honest. He sat on the curb because he DIDN adjective T. Know what else to do with a body that had been one thing and had just learned it could be another. People passed him and were people. A man carried a box with his whole attention. A kid on a scooter performed a trick for an audience that existed entirely in his own imagination, and therefore mattered more than any of the strangers around him. A woman set a coffee cup on a dumpster while she tied a shoe, and did not worry that the cup would disappear into another world while she looked down. The WORLD adjective S texture had returned. It WASN adjective T smoother or safer. It was legible. Behind the glass, the dispatch center looked like a workplace, not a lung. He could see the glow of screens that held spreadsheets and not hunger. He laughed once, a sound like a bark from a smaller dog, then put his hand over his mouth. Because it had surprised him, and because the muscle had learned restraint from a room that punished noise, the door buzzed and opened. He HADN adjective T pressed anything. The security guard who stepped out looked at him the way you look at someone who has been sitting on a curb long enough to become a question. The GUARD adjective S badge read Tommy, and his uniform shirt did that thing cloth. Does one a chest beneath it wants to pretend IT adjective S still 19. You good? Tommy asked. IDON adjective T no, Marcus said, honest in a way that left his tongue tingling. One inside. Not really, Marcus said and surprised himself again. But thank you. Tommy nodded like a man who had offered enough for a day. Need water. I adjective am okay. Okay, Tommy hesitated then said, weird morning. Phones went quiet like quiet. Never happens. EVERYBODY adjective S, taking a break I guess. He sounded like someone who had grown up next to a river that had always been loud, and had woken to a day it decided not to be. Good, Marcus said. Tommy squinted, then smiled despite himself. Yeah, he said, as if agreeing with a joke he HADN adjective T been told yet. Good. When Tommy went inside, the air seemed to lift an inch, as if relieved to have one fewer conversation to hold. Marcus stayed on the curb. He had starved the node he lived in. He had cut a wire in a world where wires were ideas held up by poles made of habit. He had not killed the organism. He had made it skip breakfast. A presence pressed against his thoughts with the gentleness of a great thing that could crush and chooses not to. The core, or some version of it that had learned how to travel without halls. Offered him a position, not a job, a posture. Join us at the center, hold the truth for us so we can eat it, be the honest voice we use to build more room. He closed his eyes and pictured his chair. He pictured the headset. He pictured the pain full of vessels growing fat on words that sounded like kindness. He pictured the truth filaments he had laid across them like a person tying ribbons around a throat. He pictured Arlene and the way her spine sat without apology over a pelvis that had learned to carry weight for other people. He pictured the dark zones licking their chops around her ankles without getting purchase. No, he told the presence, not with drama, with the practicality of someone refusing a pamphlet at a grocery store. No, thank you. It withdrew like a tide that knew better than to fight the moon. He could have gone home. He didn't adjective T. Home had too many echoes of phones. He walked instead, letting the city he thought he had known reintroduce itself. The colors were wrong in a way he found himself loving. Everything had lost the bluish tint of fluorescent compromise. Buildings were the color of brick and paint rather than fatigue. People, adjective S faces were smaller and larger both. A trick of attention. He could look at eyes without expecting them to need him. He found a payphone. It was a miracle in the wild, a relic that SHOULDN adjective T have survived the winter. And had a metal animal with a coin slot for a mouth. He lifted the receiver. Dial tone. He didn't adjective T. Dial, he listened. On the line, 1,000 nothings arranged into a sound humans have agreed. Means ready. When it rang, it WASN adjective T because HE adjective D touched a button. It rang because somewhere a child had learned that you could dial numbers without money if you got the timing right, or because an elevator had trapped a woman who had accidentally discovered a joy in panic. SHE adjective D spend the rest of her life mistaking for love, or because someone was lonely enough to breathe into a machine and call it prayer. He answered. Not 911, he said, but I adjective LL stay. Silence at the far end took a breath. Then a voice that had never heard him said, IDON adjective T no. Where I am. Neither do I, he said. But HERE adjective S the truth, you can move. Tell me WHAT adjective S around you. They talked, he told the truth. He stayed on the line while someone saved themselves, he said. Good when a stranger listened to their own feet. He said go when a stranger started telling him a story to avoid doing it. It WASN adjective T his job. It was his posture. He found another phone. He found 10. He added the truth filaments to his own mouth and to the mouths of people who would never think of themselves as operators, and discovered that you did not need a pane to lay a vessel across another vessel. It was enough to teach a sentence to someone who wanted it. He became the honest operator the building had tried to hire, but not for the building. Nights lengthened or shortened, depending on who counted. He measured them in how many times he said, no one is coming, and it became not a cruelty but a key, something that turned in. A lock with a click that felt like breath. He got tired, he slept on benches, he ate when food was near. He kept a list in a pocket notebook of the names people gave him when they remembered. They had them, he did not keep his own. One evening, clouds ordered themselves into a front like a marching band that had learned thunder. He passed a storefront TV showing news he chose not to listen to, and in its reflection, he saw a man he recognized and COULDN adjective T name. His beard had decided to exist. His eyes had made bargains with his cheekbones. He smiled at that man and found it acceptable. In a town he had never been to and always known, a child picked up a phone with hands damp From dishwater because the faucet had been taller than his reach. He dialed numbers without looking because he had watched adults do it with a fluency that had looked like magic and had decided to learn the trick. The ring sounded like a seed being asked to hurry. When the voice answered, it was not the voice that had taught the building how to build rooms with lies. It was a human voice with a scar on it and a sleep in it. Not 911, the voice said, but I ejective LL stay. The child cried once and felt embarrassed immediately, and the voice made no comment on it. And this mercy became a place to stand. THERE ejective S smoke, the child said. IT ejective S in the lights. No one is coming, said the honest operator. You have to go now. Will my mom? Maybe, the operator said, but you first, take what you can carry and move. The child moved. The house did what houses do when time pushes on them. The street accepted him the way streets accept feet. A neighbor shouted the way neighbors used to. Somewhere in a building that had learned to sleep, a dark zone opened one eye and then closed it uninterested. In a different city, a woman stood in a stairwell that had never been a stairwell and listened to a phone that had decided to be a shell, the sea inside it not a machine but an organ. She waited for a promise that did not arrive and found in its absence a muscle she had been taught to forget. She used it, she moved. In the night that was not a room, an operator answered a call that no one had placed and told a truth that became a bridge. The building did not die. It turned its head and looked for food elsewhere as all things do, but in the city where a man had starved it with a single honest sentence, spoken into a circle that had believed itself complete, silence grew like a garden. It did not need tending, it needed use. He walked into that silence and found it good.